Welcome back to the Writing Lab. How many of you would agree that writing is easy? What if I say you can write about whatever you want? Writing is always easier if the topic happens to be something you're interested in. I mean, admit it. Some of you could effortlessly kick out a 50-page senior thesis paper if your topic was comparing the relative strengths and weaknesses of different fantasy weapons. Look, I like Doctor Who as much as the next guy, but are we really going to pretend that a sonic screwdriver is even in the same league as a lightsaber or the Elder Wand? I mean, let's be serious here. Unfortunately, the truth is you don't always get to choose your topic. In fact, let's be honest, you rarely get to choose your topic. That's because your English teachers are trying to prepare you for a variety of real-world writing tasks. And the writing you end up doing professionally, by the way, don't try to kid yourself. Almost all of you will end up in a career that requires some level of writing. The writing you do professionally will rarely be the kind where you get to choose your own topic. That means that most of the writing you do in school will be in response to specific writing prompts. In order to do this well, we need to learn some strategies for decoding a writing prompt and then responding to it effectively. Let's check out an example prompt. This one comes from the 2008 AP Language and Composition exam. For years, corporations have sponsored high school sports. Their ads are found on the outfield fence at baseball parks or on the walls of the gymnasium, the football stadium, or even the locker room. But some schools have moved beyond corporate sponsorship of sports to allowing corporate partners to place their names and ads on all kinds of school facilities, libraries, music rooms, cafeterias. And schools often negotiate exclusive contracts with soft drink or clothing companies. Some people argue that corporate sponsorships are a necessity for cash-strapped schools. Others argue that schools should provide an environment free from ads and corporate influence. Using appropriate evidence, write an essay in which you evaluate the pros and cons of corporate sponsorship for schools and indicate why you find one position more persuasive than the other. Yeah. I have literally no idea what I'm supposed to write about. I confess, this is a particularly long prompt. And since it came from the AP English test, we can assume it's a particularly difficult prompt. But clearly, we need some strategies for decoding a writing prompt like this. Wait, you mean I can't just skim through the prompt in like 5.5 seconds and then just start writing something brilliant? No, you can't. This is reason number 476 why you need to stop being lazy. There are some steps you need to follow if you're going to try to tackle a writing prompt like this. We'll look at the first few steps today, and then we'll deal with the other steps next time. Step 1. Read the prompt carefully, maybe even a couple of times. Step 2. Identify key words. Step 3. Restate the prompt in your own words. When you read a prompt, don't just read it passively. You should be actively looking for specific information. Sometimes the beginning of the prompt might give you some context, which is helpful when you have to write about a topic that you're not familiar with. What are you trying to accomplish with this specific piece of writing? Are you trying to persuade someone to do or think something? Are you trying to analyze a character or a theme or an issue? Or is your goal simply to explain a concept or to describe a person or a thing or an event? Is there an expected length this essay is supposed to be? Is there a particular format the final document should take? Maybe it's a business letter or an article for the newspaper. Or maybe it's an essay formatted to a specific set of rules like MLA. In some essays, the only evidence you'll need is your own thoughts or your past experiences. But other essay prompts will ask for very specific evidence, like cite examples from at least 3 primary sources. And it would be a tragedy if you wrote a brilliant essay on Hamlet and you got a D or an F just because you failed to include at least 3 specific quotes from the play like the prompt told you to do. Last question. For any piece of writing, you have to think about your audience. Sometimes your audience will be stated right in the prompt, but other times you'll have to infer who your audience is based on context clues. Here's a hint. The audience for your essay is almost never your English teacher, even if she is the only person who will actually read it. Yeah, I know this stupid drill. You tell me my audience is like a panel of scientists studying climate change or something, but in reality, I know it's just you. Okay, calm down. You have a fair point. I realize that it might be kind of obnoxious that your English teachers are always asking you to pretend to write for a specific audience. But please remember, we're trying to prepare you for the kind of writing you'll do in the professional world. And in that setting, writing for a specific audience is incredibly important. So, let's try step 1 with our example prompt. The first thing I notice is that we have some general background information about the topic. There's also some background about the debate. This gives me some hints about the 2 sides of the issue, and it lets me know that I will probably need to choose one of these sides. Now I need to look for the specific purpose or goal. What am I supposed to accomplish in writing this essay? Here I see that my primary goal is to evaluate the pros and cons of corporate sponsorship in schools. It does say that I can choose sides, but that's not the only purpose. So I might be able to spend the body of my essay talking about pros and cons, and then in the conclusion, explain which side of the debate I'm on. But I definitely need to talk about the pros and cons, and not just the merits of whichever side I'm on. This prompt doesn't list any specific requirements for length or format. In general, if the prompt says essay, the default is probably a multi-paragraph paper with an introduction, several body paragraphs, and a conclusion. If it's anything other than that, the prompt will usually tell you so. This prompt leaves evidence sources wide open. If it's a timed essay, you're going to have to stick to your own previous knowledge and experiences. But if you have time, by all means, do some research and use what you find as evidence. Just be sure to cite your sources. This prompt doesn't list a specific audience. But remember, at least in your mind when you're writing, your audience should not just be your English teacher. So think about who you would actually deliver this type of information to. The people who would have the power to make decisions about sponsorships in your school would probably be your principal, the superintendent, or your school board. So you can assume that your audience is a group of adults who are very familiar with how schools work and who are motivated to provide adequate funding for schools, but also to avoid any negative outside influences on students. That means you probably shouldn't write this essay using the kind of informal, slang-ridden language that you would probably use if your audience was, say, the kids on your school's student council or your student government. Okay, let's move on to step 2. Identify key words in the prompt. When we read the prompt, we want to look for words that help narrow down the topic and purpose. For the most part, you can ignore the background info section and focus on the part of the prompt that tells you the topic or purpose. Ignore the filler language and just look for specific words or phrases that seem crucial to the essay you need to write. Referring back to these key words often will help keep your essay focused and on topic. Here are the words that jumped out to me: appropriate evidence, evaluate, pros and cons, corporate sponsorship, schools, position, persuasive. That appropriate evidence part is a little vague, meaning that it could mean a lot of different things. So the type of examples or evidence you use in this essay is probably up to you. Notice that pros and cons are plural. That means I need to talk about more than one pro and more than one con. Sometimes the most important word in the prompt might be a simple word like one. If the prompt asks you to identify one important rhetorical strategy in a political speech and you write about 3 rhetorical strategies, you're not really answering the prompt. So now that we've identified these key words, I'm ready to... Yes, student me? This is probably a dumb question, but the word corporate, I've heard it, I think I know what it means, but I'm not 100% sure. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up, student me. If there's a word in the prompt that seems relevant, like it might be one of the keywords, and you're not 100% sure you know what it means, ask a question or look it up. Having a clear understanding of that word might end up being vital to answering the prompt successfully. So, the word corporate means of, for, or belonging to a corporation. And the word corporation basically just means a business or company. Okay, yeah, that's kind of what I thought. Good. But just to be safe, make sure you know what all the other words mean. A good way to do this would be to come up with a synonym for each of the key words. All right, I got this. Let's see. Evaluate means to like judge or assess something. Pros and cons are like the positive things or negative things about something. Corporate sponsorship is like when a business pays the school to have their logo placed in the building somewhere. Position would be like your opinion or your side on the debate. And then persuasive is like convincing. All right, not bad. A minus. What? I freaking nailed that. I can't give you an A plus. Somebody screams nepotism, and the next thing you know, I'm getting fired for playing favorites, which is ironic considering the fact that not only are you not my favorite, I actually find you kind of obnoxious. On to step 3. Restate the prompt in your own words. The key to proving that you understand something is whether or not you can restate it in your own words. So, now that we've read the prompt carefully, several times, and identified some key words, can you restate the prompt in your own words? Okay, sure. Basically, for this essay, I need to talk about the positive and negative effects of schools getting paid to let businesses put logos in their buildings. And then I need to pick a side and explain why I find that side more convincing. Nailed it, student me. Now it's your turn. It's time to go to work. I wasn't prepared.